How well do you actually know the people you would trust with your life? If their version of a single afternoon started to drift, quietly, one small detail at a time, would you even catch it? And if every person who saw someone last walked away telling a slightly different account of the same few hours, how long would it take before you understood that the one voice who could settle all of it was the one voice that never came home? Those are the questions sitting underneath what happened off the coast of Mississippi in the summer of 2026. An 18-year-old heads out on a holiday afternoon with friends he had known for years. By nightfall, the boat returns to shore without him. 2 days later, his body is recovered from the water, and from that moment forward, the official explanation and what his own family believes have refused to meet in the middle. You have probably seen a headline about this. You may have heard a short version somewhere on your feed, but you have not heard the whole of it, and you have not heard it the way the people closest to Nolan described it, in their own voices, in recordings that most coverage skips right past. I have gone through those recordings line by line and placed them beside everything investigators, the family's attorney, and the medical examiner have said on the record. By the time we reach the end of this, you will understand exactly why so many people looked at this case and quietly concluded that the numbers simply do not line up. If you want the version of a story that the fast headlines leave half-finished, this is the channel for it. Subscribe to North American Crime Case and tap that like button before we go on, because that is genuinely what keeps breakdowns like this one reaching the people who actually want the full account instead of a summary. His name was Nolan Xavier Wells, 18 years old, from Ocean Springs, a quiet stretch of the Mississippi Gulf Coast in Jackson County. He had just finished high school, where he had been a multi-sport athlete, the kind of young man teachers and coaches remember for the right reasons. He had already earned his next step, a spot on the football roster at Southwest Mississippi Community College, lined up to play wide receiver. Everyone who spoke about him afterward described the same thing, a future that was open, bright, and entirely in front of him. To understand why his death shook an entire community, you first have to understand who his family says he was. This was not a young man on the margins of anything. He was, by every account offered by the people who raised him, a peacemaker. Someone who pulled people together rather than apart, who seemed almost physically uncomfortable when there was tension in a room, and who had been that way since he was small.
First of all, I want to say thank you, everyone, for being here. This is not how I wanted the world to meet my son, but here we are. So, as you know, I'm Christine Wells Wansley. I am Nolan Wells's mom. And Nolan is the kindest soul. He never met a stranger. He loved everybody. He didn't care if you were black, white, purple, green, looked like a marshmallow. Like, he just wanted everyone to be in peace with one another. He loved life, and God gave him this big heart, which always scared us. Me and his dad had conversations with him all the time, not just about the importance of understanding our history as black people, but also the importance of how you have to move in certain spaces. And it's not us feeding into racism or the stereotypes that comes with that. Unfortunately, that is just a matter of fact. There have been many cases, many instances that shows it's unfortunately a pattern that he did not like. He did not like that there was so much division, and I think that's why God gave him us. He was really a peacemaker. He wanted, like I said, everyone to be included. He never wanted to leave anyone out. He just, even at a young age, I don't know, he was, how old was he?
18?
No, not 18. When he was a baby, he did little dance. So his father and I were having a moment, and as couples do, and even in that moment, he runs in the room with his diaper, on, of course, and he starts dancing because it was like he could feel the tension. He could feel that something wasn't right. So he was just a special kid. Like, he was a special kid, but again, just heart was so big. And we're gonna miss him dearly. But we are grateful, especially to our friend Tashima, who actually was one of the people who helped us that night. She went and picked up his cell phone from where it was, and then provided that to us, because we of course contacted authorities to figure out who to do the report with, whether it was the county or the city, which then turned into DMR, who I contacted immediately from there. But
Tell them how you got the cell phone.
so our friend actually, when I called her, Nolan is best friends with her two sons, Jalen and Javon. When I called her, I said, Tashima, have you seen Nolan? He's missing. No one has seen him. No one has talked to him. The boys were actually with her sons, so they opened up their Snapchat, because a lot of the kids do have their locations where they're tracking one another. So one of the boys says, well, it's showing that, I can't exactly remember what his location was showing, but my Life 360 location was showing something completely different. It was actually showing that his phone was like he was on land. And so we ended up, she received the phone from that parent, and then we met up where his car was, which was at a separate location. There were issues obtaining the key.
That is the young man at the center of this. Hold on to that, because everything that follows is measured against it. The whole reason his parents refuse to accept the earliest, simplest explanation is that it asks them to believe he behaved in a way that contradicts the person they knew for 18 years. Now, the day itself. The 4th of July, 2026. Nolan and a group of friends took a boat out to Horn Island. If you are not from that part of the country, Horn Island is a barrier island roughly 10 miles off the Mississippi coast, part of a national seashore, and it is not the kind of place you can simply drive to or walk away from. It is reachable only by private boat. That single fact matters more than almost anything else in this story, because it means that once you are out there, your way home is the vessel that brought you, and the people who came with you. The group went out to celebrate the holiday. At some point in the afternoon, according to what has been pieced together, the boat began taking on water. Around 4 in the afternoon, one of the teenagers on board called a private towing company for help, reporting that a pump on the boat had failed and that they were in trouble on the water. The friends made the decision to leave. And here is where the first fracture in the story appears, the one that has never fully closed. When the group left the island, Nolan was not with them. The earliest account offered to the public, based on what investigators understood at the time, was that Nolan had chosen to stay behind on the island, intending to come back later. His family heard that explanation and immediately pushed against it, and their reasoning was simple and consistent. They had raised him with one rule about going out in a group, drilled into him so many times that it became reflex. You leave together and you return together, no exceptions. To them, the idea that he would peel off from his friends and remain alone on a remote island simply did not fit the person he was. That night, he did not come home. His mother's account of how she learned something was wrong is one of the most quietly devastating moments in this entire case, and it is one you should hear in her own words rather than mine.
Late on July 4th, his mom says her heart dropped when she saw one of Nolan's friends calling.
What did he say?
He said, hey, Miss Christine, have you seen Nolan or talked to Nolan? I said, no, I thought he was with you guys, you know. He's like, no, nobody's talked to him. We left the island at, I think he said 3 p.m., and he wanted to stay because he was talking to a girl.
Sit with what she is describing there. A mother is being asked by one of her son's own friends whether she has seen him when she had every reason to believe he was safe in their company. She had not seen him. She had assumed, as any parent would, that he was still with the group. And in that instant, the ordinary worry of a parent turned into something far heavier. What happened over the next several hours is a portrait of a family trying to do the work that they felt was not being done fast enough for them. They began trying to trace him. The friends who had been on the trip turned to a location-sharing app to look for Nolan's whereabouts. But according to his mother, the location that app displayed did not match what she was seeing on a separate tracking app of her own. One picture suggested one thing, the other suggested that his phone had made its way back to land. That discrepancy became the first of several details the family could not reconcile. Following the trail of that phone, the family says they tracked it to the home of one of Nolan's friends, and retrieving it, by their account, was not straightforward. His father has described going to that house to recover Nolan's car and his keys, and finding the process unexpectedly difficult, with tension at the door and answers that seem to arrive slowly.
Elmore Wansley, the father.
Okay, so the situation with the key. When we got to the house, a few of his friends, they were already there. And they were at the door in the house, asking questions. So when I walked up, they were getting, things were getting kind of intense. So I turned to them and told them, I need you guys to calm down. I don't do this to me right now. I need them to kind of trust me so they can give me something. So I was able to calm them down. So the guy, he's in one of the pictures, but he came out of the room, half asleep or whatever, I think Jax or whatever. And I said, look, I'm Nolan's father. I'm here to get his keys so I can get his car. I said, he's like...
His car was in the yard.
His car was parked in the yard. So he was like, I don't know, man. Nolan's like my brother. I said, well, if Nolan was like your brother, would you please go in your room and see if you can find my son's keys so I can take his car home? He walks off, 2 or 3 minutes, come back. I can't find the keys. I said, okay, so at that point, I get the boys and I move them out the house because I didn't want them to go into the house and start tearing up these people's houses because there'd never be a hole in the situation. So we walk outside by the car. One of the guys that was in the house with us, he was on the phone with a girl, and the girl told him that Nolan's keys were on top of this Jax guy's Xbox in the house because apparently she was there with him earlier. So he goes back up to the door by himself, and 5 minutes later, the keys come out. So now I feel like you done lied to me. So now I'm really like in distrust with you. But as far as the night goes, if I knew anyone who had a boat, I would have went out that night looking for my son. We tried, but I don't have friends with boats. But if I knew someone with one, I would have went out that night. And it so happened that his coach saw all the stuff on Facebook that next morning and called and contacted me at like 5 in the morning, asked me did we want to go out. And I told him yes. So within an hour, he was at the dock. We met him and we went out. We docked the boat, got out the boat, walked on the island, walked a pretty nice stretch, came back, got back on the boat, went around the island, looked, came back around, and where we went to, that's where apparently they say that his body floated up. I don't know a lot about water currents or whatever, but I would think that we would have saw his body. And on the trip there was a family that stayed a night on the island, like actually tented out on the island. So if he was left, he would have saw that family on the island, and there was 2 other boats docked, so he would have had help. So I don't know. I think we stayed there for like an hour and a half. That's when Jackson County and the sheriff department showed up, and they were going to do their rounds. And I had a classmate of mine, him and his 2 boys, they came out and they searched, and then they got back in touch with me and said the Coast Guard had finally showed up in airplanes. So
I want to be careful and precise here, because this is exactly the kind of case where careless words do harm. Everything the family describes about that night is their experience and their perspective. It is not, on its own, evidence of wrongdoing by anyone, and no one has been charged with a crime in connection with Nolan's death. What the family is describing is why they felt, from the very first night, that they were not getting a clear or complete picture. That feeling is the engine of everything that came afterward. The search stretched into the following days. Nolan's father has spoken about going out on the water himself, with help, walking a stretch of the island, circling it by boat, looking. And it was during that search that another question took shape in the family's mind, one about timing. If Nolan had entered the water on the 4th, they wondered aloud why his body was not found until the 6th. To a family already struggling to make the official version cohere, the delay became one more thread that would not tie off neatly. On the morning of July 6th, roughly 2 days after he was last seen, Nolan's body was recovered from the water near the western end of Horn Island. It was found by a ranger, and once it was located, the search was called off. The following day, his identity was confirmed through DNA and dental records. There was no longer any hope to hold on to. There was only the question that would come to define the months ahead. Investigators early on indicated that they suspected an accidental drowning, and the sheriff's department stated that no foul play had been identified at that stage. But they were also clear that the investigation was continuing, and that they were working to establish what had actually happened through witness accounts and physical evidence. That distinction matters. Suspecting an accident is not the same as proving one, and the official cause of death was not something anyone could yet state with certainty. The family, meanwhile, was not waiting. They brought on a nationally known civil rights attorney to conduct an independent investigation because, in their words, too much of what they were being told failed to hold together, and they began speaking publicly about the specific details that troubled them most. One of those details concerned Nolan's phone and his social media. His mother has said that when she and her sister were finally able to look through his accounts, going through the app that so many young people use to document their day, they found them empty. No photos, no videos from that day, nothing saved, even though they looked within the window of time in which such content would normally still be there. For a mother who knew her son as someone who constantly recorded and photographed everything around him, that emptiness felt wrong.
One last thing, we want to have Christine talk about the cell phone from her perspective before they tell you who Nolan was, and then we'll take your questions.
So when we made it home, my sister and I actually went through Nolan's cell phone, particularly Snapchat, because that is so popular with the children. And when we opened it up, there was nothing. There were no saved pictures. There were no snaps from that day. And we did open it before the 24-hour expiration. So we found that very concerning, only because anyone who's ever been around Nolan will tell you at social gatherings, he's taking videos, he's taking pictures, he's even come up to me when I'm getting ready to go to bed, hey Ma, come on, take a picture of me. You know, like he's just, that was Nolan. So that's why we feel that things may have been deleted, was because of the fact that there was nothing in either one of his accounts. But I do want to say this. I would hope that any parent who, God forbid, would be in our situation, I would hope that you would do the same thing. I would hope that you would ask for any help, receive any help to get answers, because at the end of the day, that's all we want. We just want to know. We just want to know what happened and why our baby didn't come home. Like that's our biggest thing. And we are so grateful to everyone, family, friends, classmates, United Cajun Navy, everybody that's assisted us. We appreciate you. There's not enough thank yous that we could say or give to you, but I just, we just want to know. We want an honest, thorough investigation. That's all we're asking for. That's it.
Now, responsibility demands that I tell you the other half of this, because a good story and an honest one have to be the same thing. The claims about the phone are the family's account, and they have not been confirmed by a forensic examination that has been made public. Legal analysts commenting on the case have pointed out that only a full forensic review of the device can actually determine whether anything was deleted, or explain what location data really shows. There has also been reporting suggesting the phone may have been left aboard the boat, which sits in tension with parts of the tracking account. Investigators, for their part, have been examining the digital evidence with federal assistance. In other words, this thread is real, it is being examined, and it is not yet resolved. Presenting it as settled would be dishonest, and dishonesty is how channels get things badly wrong. There is one more piece from this stretch of the story that I include specifically because leaving it out would be a disservice to you. At one point, a video circulated online that many people believed showed some kind of confrontation involving Nolan on the island. It spread, as these things do, and it fed a great deal of speculation. But one of Nolan's friends came forward publicly and explained that the video did not show what people feared. He said the shouting people heard was him, and that it was not the altercation the internet had imagined. I tell you that because rumor and fact are not the same currency, and a case this serious deserves to be handled with the difference kept firmly in view. As the weeks passed, the investigation widened considerably. The sheriff's department reported interviewing dozens of witnesses and stated that the friends who had been on the boat were interviewed in depth. Federal investigators were brought in to help examine the digital evidence that had been collected. The district attorney overseeing the case indicated that once the investigation was complete, the matter would be presented to a grand jury, which would decide whether any charges were warranted. She has publicly described the case as a priority and has defended the pace and the care of the work, rejecting suggestions of bias in how it was being handled. But the single development that drew the most national attention came from the family's own independent inquiry. They had arranged for a second, private autopsy, separate from the official one being conducted by the state. And when the findings from that independent examination were announced, they did not deliver the resolution that so many had been bracing for. The independent pathologist concluded that both the cause and the manner of Nolan's death were undetermined, pending further investigation. Undetermined, not an accident confirmed. Not a crime confirmed. The one thing that everyone had expected might finally bring clarity instead left the central question exactly where it had been. The report did note certain findings. There was a red discoloration observed in the soft tissue at the back of the head, and the pathologist said the cause of that discoloration was not clear. Outside experts who reviewed the general findings noted that such discoloration could be the result of natural changes to the body after death, or it could indicate an injury, and that distinguishing between those possibilities can be genuinely difficult. The report also noted something that the family found deeply frustrating. When the second pathologist received Nolan's body for examination, certain internal structures of the neck were not present, having been removed during the first official autopsy. It is worth stating plainly that removing tissue for closer examination during an initial autopsy is a recognized and not unusual practice. But it did mean that the independent examiner said he could not fully rule out injury to that area as a possible factor. The family's attorney framed the overall findings as inconclusive, acknowledging that no evidence of wrongdoing had been established, while stressing that non-accidental factors could not be excluded either. As of the latest information available, the official state autopsy results had not been released, with toxicology testing still pending. Around all of this, a larger conversation was building, and it is impossible to tell this story honestly without addressing it directly and carefully. Nolan was the only black teenager, or one of very few, in the group that went out that day, and photographs from the trip showed him among mostly white friends, on a holiday, in a state whose history with racial violence is long and well documented. That context is precisely why this case moved beyond a local tragedy and became a national one. His family, their attorney, a prominent civil rights leader who spoke at his memorial, and a major civil rights organization all framed their demand for a transparent, thorough investigation against that history. The civil rights organization went so far as to call for a higher-level review of how Nolan came to be left on that island. It is important to be exact about what is being claimed here. No one has established that race caused Nolan's death. What these voices have asserted is that the history of the place demands the investigation be complete, transparent, and beyond question. Meanwhile, the officials leading the case have maintained that it is being pursued as a priority and have rejected the suggestion that bias shaped their work. The response from the wider public was significant. A combination of well-known figures came forward offering a substantial reward, reported to total in the range of $125,000, for information leading to an arrest and conviction in the event that a crime had in fact occurred. That careful conditional phrasing tells you everything about where this case actually stands. Even those offering money for answers were acknowledging that whether a crime took place at all remains, officially, an open question. And so we arrive at the place where this part of the story rests, which is not a conclusion, because there is not yet one to give. What we know for certain is narrow and painful. A gifted 18-year-old went out with people he trusted on a holiday afternoon. The boat came back without him. 2 days later, he was found in the water. The people who were there have given accounts that his family says do not fully align. 2 separate examinations of his body have, so far, failed to declare with certainty how he died. A grand jury may eventually weigh whatever the investigation produces. And through all of it, the questions his parents have asked from the very beginning remain unanswered. His father has said, with a grief that is hard to hear, that his son should be at football practice, not in the ground. His mother has reduced the family's entire pursuit to a single simple question. What happened to their son? Not a theory, not an accusation, a question. And until the official findings are complete and the investigation reaches whatever end it reaches, that question is the only honest place to leave this. That is where this part of the story stops. But it is not where the case ends, and it is not where our coverage ends either. The state's findings are still to come. The grand jury process still lies ahead. And there are voices and details from these recordings that we have only begun to work through. If you want to be here when the next pieces land, and when the answers this family is still waiting for finally arrive, subscribe to North American Crime Case right now, turn on notifications, and leave a like on this video so it reaches more people who care about getting the truth right, rather than getting it first. Tell me in the comments what stood out to you most, and we will pick this up together in the next part.